Hi everyone, welcome to one more interview for Java EE Next Interview project. And today we have our guest here, Mr. Werner. Werner, thank you very much to receiving us. Thank you for accepting our invitation. It's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Sorry to bother you in a Saturday. I know you should be doing pretty much funny things than talking with me, but I'm very thankful for you.
We did have a slightly longer weekend here, so it's okay.
Yeah. So Werner, please introduce yourself a little. Tell a little about what you do. I know that you are a very busy guy in the Java world, doing many JSRs involved with JCP, executive committee, and so on.
Yes, so I have been in the Java community process since approximately 2005, so over 10 years. And for nearly 10 years, I've been in the executive committee without interruption. So I think at the moment I must be the longest serving individual member, especially the longest serving that has also been elected and not ratified over all those years. And since the last election, I'm in the newly created associate category as one of the two associate members, both individuals as well. And both are also very active in the Java EE community. So since the last election, it definitely seems Java EE has got a slightly stronger representation in the executive committee. I'm also in the umbrella Java EE expert group since Java EE 6, and in a couple of expert groups, especially JSP, where 1.1, where I also help the spec lead and expert group actively, or the Java security standard JSR 375, and a few others like CDI, but especially some of the newer ones or the ones that needed help while, for example, Oracle has not been able to push it as they do again now. I helped some of the expert groups that needed a little more help during that time. And
Wow.
I was also a spec lead, or now I'm a maintenance lead for the Java units of measurement standard, where, for example, Ottavio from SouJava is very helpful in the expert group, and the other co-spec lead and co-maintenance lead is also from Brazil, although he's now based in Texas.
Well, you've been busy, man. With so many JSRs and specifications and involvement with JCP, what are your expectations related to Java EE8? We are almost in the release date, maybe on summer. What do you expect from this release related to bug fixes, improvements, and things like that?
Well, it was really quite active. Several of us were astounded and happy to see that, for example, Java Mail also got a maintenance release and some improvements for Java EE8. That was sort of a surprise candidate. At least it wasn't so widely announced at Java 1 or other events. So it definitely looks like a lot of the components of Java EE are improved, not only to use, for example, things like lambdas and Java SE8 underneath the hood, but also to work better with gluing standards, if you want to call them like that, like CDI, that hold together many of the other pieces via dependency injection.
Good.
So some of the old JSRs, especially Java Mail or JMS, that was improved a little earlier. So So this time we won't see that much with GMS, but it saw a large improvement in Java EE 7. And some of the others that were barely touched over the years now luckily also get a little brush over or even more.
Oh, got it. And for the new features and the improvements, what of those you would highlight for people that are interested on Java EE8? What do you think they are the best and best improvements?
I would say the completely new JSRs to highlight are especially JSON binding, where you can bind any Java object or bean to a JSON string. And of course, since JSON is becoming more and more important for APIs, not just if you call them microservices, but generally APIs that are exchanged between applications, both in social media, but also in more business-like APIs. So what started more or less with Twitter, Facebook, and others roughly 10 years ago, we now see APIs almost everywhere. I also know, I just recently worked in a project where banks exchange APIs. It may not happen to every bank around the world, but there are some that are driving innovation a little faster, and they are also willing to consume APIs as long as they're secure enough to meet their clients and their own standards. So we see APIs almost everywhere, whether you check your steps or your pulse with Fitbit and other similar fitness devices, or you want to check your bank account, or what your friends have been doing on Facebook. All of that is now done via APIs, and with very few exceptions, most of them are also involving JSON. So having JSON binding standardized is definitely something that is very helpful in that context. So people can more easily consume those JSON messages and turn them into their own object model of the applications. And yeah, speaking of security, as I also mentioned it, the Java EE security API, which is pretty much a completely new JSR, except for building on top of a few existing security constructs, but it has introduced many things that were only available in third-party, proprietary, or closed-sourced solutions, and is trying to standardize them now, especially around single sign-on or standardized identity store across different storage mechanisms. So you can store the identity either in an LDAP system or in your database or in a flat file or whatever suits your needs best. And it's also easier to exchange those mechanisms without having to completely rewrite your application. And there are a few others that were around, but for example, CDI with version 2 is also a rather massive change because CDI has been broken down into smaller pieces so that the same dependency injection can be used in a standalone application where you don't have a server, as well as in the traditional Java EE container. So that also diversifies Java EE in ways that, for example, the so-called serverless applications can also be used with pretty much the same standards or a number of those that suits the particular use case.
Got it. And took a very long time since the last version, since the 7, maybe 4 years. You think it will impact in some way this release in terms of adoption, or I don't know, what do you think it will work for better or for good?
I think it will work, although I'm also seeing users that are just now slowly starting to adopt Java EE7. So it's, even though both with Java SE and EE, it seems there's a sort of trend that you would like to have a new release train of your entire standard catalog to be updated every year. We see that with things like Eclipse, and Google I/O was just a little over a week ago, where they introduced Android, what is it, L now, I think, and the statistics said that only around 50,000 people actually started using the previous version that was introduced at Google I/O last year. So with Java EE, it is, if even the consumer devices, where you would think that in theory millions of people could jump onto the new release and immediately use the newest version of their mobile phone, but of course many of them are in contracts, so their contracts do not change until maybe 2 or 3 years, so that they have to use their mobile phone before they're allowed to upgrade to a new one, or they pay a lot of money for always buying a new one without a contract. So there are many factors, even with mobile devices, where you see introducing a new version of the operating system or the platform every year does not mean that 100% of the users will immediately update to the new version. And if that doesn't change as fast with Android, and you see that only a very small amount actually upgraded to the most recent version, then you can imagine that this is actually not that different, or even more severe in the enterprise world, because there you may have applications that are also, after they are delivered, rarely touched unless there are some bug fixes, and they may have to run for 5, 10, or 20 years. So many of those applications, if they were written for Java EE5, then they may be upgraded to EE7 or even 8, but they will not be upgraded every year just because there's a new release of Java EE. So even though I appreciate and I understand a certain agility, or trying to drive the market a little faster, similar to what the competitors may do, but with standards, there's at least a certain level of maturity, and having a new Java EE version every 2, 3, or even 4 years doesn't seem that wrong.
Got it.
And if it doesn't break everything, like we at least hear lots of rumors and fears, and even in some cases confirmed situations where Java SE 9 is going to cause a lot of trouble. But if it's not a massive break, then having a Java, whatever they call it, whether they call it 9.1 or even 10, if it's not a massive break that all the applications have to be rewritten, then with Java SE on the desktop, it is, or for the underlying JVM, I could see a faster release cycle makes sense there. But for the Java EE umbrella, I guess you wouldn't really be happy calling it EE9 if there is just a single JSR, or maybe 2, that have been upgraded and all the others remain the same. So I would say, especially with some unexpected candidates like Java Mail, EE8 makes a very good overall impression, but I'm not sure if it will only take a year to have a similar amount of stable and good quality JSRs to call another EE9 within a year.
Yeah, seems like it's a huge result for a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and still talking about migration, for developers or companies that want to migrate from 7 to 8, how do you think it will be? Yeah, they will have some hard times, or will be smoothly? What do you expect from that?
Well, some of the new features like JSON B that have not been around, or in other areas, the security API, I think there it depends if, for example, existing standards by, or existing open source solutions by Red Hat or even Spring may use some of the JSRs like 375, then migrating to those standards would usually involve updating whatever API you've been using. With JSON, it will probably be something that in certain cases, the applications that have been using things like Jackson may consider using the JSON-B standard if that allows them to switch between different implementations. And even though they are probably not as well known, but I just wrote an article about JSON-P 1.1 as part of Java EE8, and there are also Jackson extension modules where you can use Jackson as an implementation of the JSON-P standard. So it's not, I think it's not an official implementation, but people have created implementations on their own on GitHub for JSON-P. I don't know if it passes the TCK or not, but it's said to be an implementation for JSON-P that is backed by Jackson. So we don't know yet if the project itself will officially support it, but there may be people who would prefer a standard, so they are not bound to a particular project or vendor, and could be switching from things like Jackson to JSON-B, or we could see somebody actually implementing JSON-B via things like Jackson. So then you would probably also have a need to upgrade certain components, but it would be a little smoother if you can reuse what you are already using. Then you will probably call the standard API instead of a proprietary implementation.
Okay.
And for CDI, I think it is more or less backward. So there are no significant breaches where something that worked before doesn't work at all, or that a method has been completely removed. So everything is pretty backward compatible, especially in the enterprise world. And we saw things that were mandatory that are no longer mandatory, or that are even just optional and up to the container. So things like Corba were mandatory until at least Java EE6, but they were gradually removed. So as with the new features, both security and JSON binding have their equivalents in a non-standard fashion. So if developers want, or their companies want to migrate and change to Java EE8, then they would probably have to change some of those. But the ones that were already using existing standards in Java EE7 would probably see very little or almost no need to rewrite something.
Oh, that's great.
So existing Java EE7 applications will see less of a change, but if you have an application that was, for example, based on Spring or something else, and for whatever reason you wanted to change to a more standard approach, then you may probably have to replace or call things a little differently.
Sure, understand. And Werner, we have some buzzwords today like microservice, containers, microprofile. Do you think that Java EE will be more suitable for those technologies, or maybe we should wait for Java EE 9? What do you think about it?
Well, for example, the Eclipse microprofile project is somewhat similar to what Spring or Drop Wizard or other technologies that claim to be the solution for microservices, and almost all of them do, and some of them are, some more and some less, but there are definitely a few that have been pretty popular, and many of them have at least done some sort of mix and match, if you want. So for example, with JSON, in the absence of a JSON binding standard, you saw many of them use some of the more popular open source alternatives like JSON from Google or Johnson and Jackson. So especially Johnson is a project that is already implementing the existing JSON standards, and it is also supposed to implement JSON binding. So we see things that can be used even if you don't want to use the reference implementation, but those frameworks for microservices that have a mix and match approach. So they may not be using EJB out of the Java EE standard, so they are not fully Java EE compliant in that sense, but they use certain parts of the Java EE platform like CDI or JSON, and we'll probably see them also add parts that are new with JSON, with Java EE 8, for example, like JSON binding, in addition to JSON processing. So I guess they will definitely find some new ingredients in Java EE 8 that can be very helpful and allow them to be more interoperable across different containers or also with other frameworks. So I don't think most of them will have to wait for Java EE 9. Maybe there are things that may or may not come with EE 9, like configuration that they will only be able to use in a standard way then, but they try it now. Most of them have approaches. So I would say this is a little bit like what we saw with Hibernate, that established the object relational mapping before JPA was there, and now it's one of the major implementations of JPA, and it was also a very active player and a huge influence and inspiration the JPA standard. So we may actually see some of those, if there is something that wasn't standardized with Java EE 8 yet because it was too soon, then we may probably see some of those projects and microservice libraries and frameworks that can also be influential to the future Java EE standards in one way or the other, either by participating in an expert group or at least by being so popular and doing a good job applying some of those microservice patterns that they can be seen as a de facto standard now, and so that whatever future standard exists in this area will also try to do a similar job.
Okay. And Werner, Java EE has migrated to GitHub, as many JSRs already has migrated. Do you think that it will bring the developers closer to the specification, will bring the community to participate, to get involved?
Yeah, it definitely has increased the visibility. And I have recently seen, I don't know how far it will be extended and driven, but GitHub has just started to even add something similar to a marketplace. So some of you probably know Eclipse marketplace or heard of it, and because, for example, the microprofile initiative and now official Eclipse project is at Eclipse, I suggested that some of those components may also be presented there, or commercial products that build on top of it. And now we see GitHub doing something similar. So it's there were attempts by companies like BEA, for example, before it was taken over by Oracle, to create a marketplace for enterprise Java beans. So there was a marketplace for client-side components and for Java beans or similar components in different languages, but except maybe for Visual Basic and a few Java components that can be used in more or less rich user interface environment, those markets never really kicked off that well, or most of them even died before they were widely adopted. So we never really saw anything like the Apple Store or the Google Play for enterprise components. And since GitHub is a very widely used platform and ecosystem, it's definitely interesting to see that they now also started something like a marketplace. And by being on GitHub now, it's probably also a possibility for Java EE standards and their implementations to make themselves visible there, especially if they are already on GitHub themselves.
Okay. And Werner, for developers that wanna try Java EE or wanna migrate from some another technology, or maybe start from scratch, do you recommend any kind of resources? I don't know, blogs, books, articles, or whatever that have good information for it?
Well, I think for EE8, the official books don't seem to be out yet, although there will definitely be some of the authors that have written books on Java EE7 that will certainly upgrade their books to EE8 very soon, or are probably writing on them as we speak. And there are several good collections of examples, both by Red Hat, but also others. One was created, I believe, by Arun Gupta, also writing a book. It must have been maybe for Java EE7. And he created a collection of examples that was now picked up and is contributed to by many of the leading experts from JSRs like security or the umbrella Java EE. So there are a couple of GitHub organizations. I think one is called Java EE Examples, as far as I remember, that has examples for Java EE7 in a very wide range, and many of them are now being updated and have already been created for the new technologies in Java EE8, like security and others. So there are official Java EE examples, or more or less official, and you can find several of them on GitHub. I think one organization must be called Java EE Examples, as far as I remember.
Yeah, I think so. And Werner, do you have any final words, tips, thoughts, or whatever to the people that are watching us?
Well, I can definitely recommend everybody who works with Java EE or in an enterprise environment to try out some of the standards. Some of them are final right now, especially JSON and CDI and a few others, but others like security, it has as of this week published the public review stage, so there's at least one more stage, the final approval after that. So please have a look at especially some of those new standards. If you are interested in security or you want to make your existing Java EE app more secure, then have a look at those, because here you can actually also try to get involved, whether you raise an issue ticket or subscribe to the mailing list. You can get involved and try to give a final brush to one of the new parts of Java EE 8 just before it goes final.
Okay, so Werner, I would like to thank you very much for having us today. Thank you for accepting our invitations. Thank you for your time. And I wish you the best in your career, in your life, okay?
Okay, yeah. Thanks for inviting me, and have a nice weekend.
Okay, you too. So guys, thank you very much for watching us today. And if you haven't subscribed on SouJava channel, please click on subscribe button here down below. And have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.